Okay, Mark, you're on the Bellator beat this week.
Yes,
Give us an update real quick of the semifinals of the $1 million Bellator Bantamweight World Grand Prix, as well as the Women's Flyweight Championship rematch between Carmouche and Velasquez.
All right, so I'll take it working up the card in the order that the fights were. We'll just hit the three big fights here because we got a lot of fights to preview still, and it's getting late. But, yeah, so Bellator, we had the semifinals of the Bantamweight Grand Prix. First one of the night was Patchy Mix tapping Magomed Magomedov in round two. Or I shouldn't even say tapping. Put him to sleep. I thought Patchy fought really well in this fight. He looked good on the feet. He used his length to kind of keep Magomed from getting going. Then Magomed takes Mix down, and Mix has it reversed within seconds, and Maga kind of kept trying to grapple. And you started to see, like, man, this is not there for him. Like, he shouldn't have been looking for it. Mix had the advantage every time they hit the grappling. And Magomed looked for it again in round two. Mix went for the neck again, as he continually had tried. And this time, Magomed couldn't get away, man. So you can't play with Patchy Mix in any situation where he has a shot at your neck. And we're learning that. It's time for me to accept how good this guy is. I said last week, for one reason or another, I haven't fully accepted that he's this good. He's this good. Like, Magomed needed to fight him in a way that prevented the grappling and make it a striking match. And sometimes what you realize about some of these guys, like, last week, and I'm thinking about this, I'm like, Magomed's so well-rounded, I think he can do it. But sometimes what you don't think about these fighters is that, like, they don't know how to fight that way. Like, he is such a mix-it-up guy, and that's why he's good, that in a matchup where he should have done less mixing it up and more striking, he couldn't. Like, he couldn't stop grabbing Mix and trying to clinch because it's his game. And, like, he didn't know how to not fight that way. And every time he did, he was in trouble because Mix is just so fucking good. So I was really impressed by Mix. Like I said, he did a great job in the striking. His striking, you can tell, is improving leaps and bounds. My man threw a spinning wheel kick at one point. Didn't land, but it was pretty. And yet, you do not want to be in any grappling situation with that man. So I'm very curious what we're going to see in the finals between him and Raufeon Stots, which I will get to. I wonder if Stots even looks to wrestle at all. He feels like a little more of a person who could try to play a pure striking game and see how that goes. But we will see. But big statement by Patchy Mix to kind of say, hey, I might win this whole tournament and no one's really talking about me, because not only does he beat Magomedov, he becomes the first guy to finish Magomedov, and he puts him out cold in the middle of the cage. So Patchy Mix is a problem. Big win for him. Anything you guys want to say on that before I go to the next one?
No, I saw the finish from it, and it just... Patchy Mix looks like such an animal of a human being that I can only imagine what getting choked out by that man must feel like.
He looks different. Like, sometimes you feel like it's stupid when people say stuff like this, but I feel like he looks mentally different. Like, he looks more zoned in than he has looked in the past. Like, back when he had his title shot and he lost to Juan Archuleta, like, he just looks like a different guy. He looks like he's more of like a killer, like Stone Cold Killer type vibes. So, yeah, he's in a good place right now. Okay, switching off of the tournament for a second, we will hit the co-main, which was Liz Carmouche defending her flyweight title in a rematch with Julianna Velasquez, and she did it again. Round two, armbar for Liz Carmouche. And honestly, I wish so badly that I saw the interviews that Bellator put up in their pre-fight promo before we picked this fight last week, because I swear to God, they ended, and I was like, Liz is going to fucking smash this girl. Because Julianna was just so cocky and disillusioned and giving off this vibe like she thought the belt was hers by, like, divine right or something. And as soon as she finished talking, I was like, this girl's going to get killed. And Liz walked right through her. I mean, not a ton happened in the first round, but it was still kind of a statement by Liz because she just walked right at Julianna all round and kind of let her know, even though not a lot was accomplished, Julianna realized very often that she was not going to have any space in there and that Liz was just coming and pressing forward the whole fight. And then she comes right back out in round two. And at the end of round one, she got a takedown right at the end and kind of moved almost into mount, which I'm sure was in Julianna's head coming out of that round. So I liked the work Liz did in round one, even though not a ton happened. And then round two, she comes out it's more of the same. Clearly, Liz learned in that first fight that Julianna did not have the requisite skills to stop her wrestling. That's the game plan she came in with in this fight, and she went for it relentlessly, and she got her right back down in round 2. She mounted her, she flattened her out, threw the leg over, armbar, and I'm sure it had to feel great for her. And honestly, I mentioned this last week, but Liz Carmouche, at 38 years old, is still one of the best 125-pounders in the world. Like, she doesn't have many losses. And if she was in the UFC, I fully believe she'd still be a factor in that division. I'm not saying she'd beat Valentina, but she might beat the girls who aren't Valentina. So I think people kind of forgot how good Liz was when she went over to Bellator for one reason or another, but she is reminding everyone.
Amen.
All right. Shall I take it to the main event?
Yeah, I'm interested to hear about this one.
All right. So, main event, other side of the Bantamweight Grand Prix semis, which was the interim champ, Raufeon Stots, defending his belt against Danny Sabatello. It was a weird fight. I get why the scoring was kind of all over the place. I don't get how one dude scored at 50-45 for Sabatello. That was insane to me. But otherwise, I get it. Certainly toss-up rounds. Certainly came down to your style. You know, we've talked about it on the show already about, you know, control versus damage. And you're supposed to favor the damage. But it was hard in this one because there was so much control in certain rounds from Sabatello. And, like, he wasn't doing anything with it. He wasn't landing strikes necessarily. He never had a sub attempt. But it was the kind of control where it was like you'd get up and he'd mat return you and kind of not like lift you up and slam you, but he'd like slam Stots back down into the mat, like his head down and that kind of thing. And Stots would get up again and he'd like switch to the back and drag him down again. So like it's not just laying control. It was like mat return control. So it's like you kind of want to want to score that a bit, but there's still no damage happening. Whereas Stots was at least doing the damage, but he wasn't doing a ton of it, and he was getting controlled mostly. So it was a very hard one for me. Usually in those instances, it's easier for me to be like, I'm going to the damage. This one, I want you guys to see it because it was tricky. It was hard to call. For me, round 1, I went Sabatello. Stots was never in trouble, like I said, really for any second. But Danny made him feel the pressure, and he kind of controlled him, and Stots didn't do much that round. So that was Sabatello round for me. Round 2 was tough to score. It's the kind of round like I was just describing. Sabatello had a lot of control, but Stots had the cleanest strikes of the round. He threw in a knee bar late. I gave that to him. So it's 1-1 for me. Round 3 I thought was Stots. Sabatello didn't get his control till late in that round. Stots kind of racked up a bit of points early. It was all competitive. There was never a moment in this fight where like someone was doing something big necessarily. Like Sabatello was hanging on the feet. It was all competitive. But I gave round 3 to Stots. Had a 2-1 there. Round 4 I thought was Danny's. It kind of came back the other way. He was more effective with the grappling. Stots did not do much that you could put in his scoring column. So I had a 2-2 going into the 5th. And the 5th was tough. Like, it was another round where I was leaning Stots mostly the whole way because he had scored more, and although Sabatello ended up controlling, he just wasn't doing much. But then I had him kind of closing the gap as it got to the end, and then they stand up late, and Sabatello lands a left hook that kind of stumbles Stots, and then he hits him with one more after that. And I was like, fuck, did he just steal the round right there? Like, it was just really hard rounds to score. So I don't know what I had. I've only watched this the one time. I haven't got to rewatch this. I had a 2-2 going into the 5th. I could see the 5th going either way. It was just a really, really close fight. It was one where it kind of felt strange. Like, I almost wanted to say Stots won it, but it felt weird in your brain because for such a more amount of time in the fight, Sabatello was in the advantageous position. So your brain wanted to feel like Sabatello won it. So it was a close one. MMA decisions was like 60-40 for Stots, so even they were pretty damn torn. I get why Sabatello was pissed. He walked out of the cage as soon as the decision was read. Literally, I think, walked into the crowd and, like, walked away. He was pissed. Stots looked a little surprised, to be honest, but then he acted not surprised once he started talking, but I felt like the natural reaction at first he did look a little surprised. But yeah, I am fine with this going either way, to be honest. And it just turned out to be one of these fights. Like, I had high hopes for this fight. I thought it was going to be entertaining. But it really wasn't so much just because Stots is so impossible to control. Like, literally impossible. That Danny couldn't score because he had to spend every second focused on trying to keep the man still and not lose his control of him. So he never really got to open up with punches or subs or anything. And at the same time, Danny is such a threat to wrestle you that Stots was so tentative to open up on the feet. So it was like kind of a fight of nothing. So it was a bit disappointing. It's a fight that I would not be shocked to see again, especially if, say, Stots wins this tournament and he needs a challenger, Sabatello gets a win, something like that. I could absolutely see this happen again. It doesn't feel like it was finished to me, and it doesn't feel like we got a true verdict on who the better man was.
All right. Thank you, sir, for that very
a little bit
thorough.
long, but I felt like it was necessary on a fight with weird scoring.
Yeah, no worries.